You are listening to the podcast of the Mathias Corvinus Collegium, the largest talent management institute in Hungary. If you want to know more about our mission, please look up our English website at mcc.hu/en or check out our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter channels. For interesting articles and analysis of our professors, external contributors, and students, look up our knowledge base at corvinus.hu/en.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next installment of the Fellow Talks podcast series. And with this installment, now we have come full circle because now we managed to cover all the participants of the current year of the Budapest Fellowship Program. And our guest today is, well, I share a lot of similarities with him, namely our names are kind of similar or almost identical, I could say. But he's also the youngest in his crew. And basically, he has joined to the Budapest Fellowship Program to conduct research on migrant integration into the EU and the Central European region. He's also an aspiring journalist, and he is ready to carve out a path on his own. And with this discussion, we are going to take a look at his view of the world and how he manages to capitalize on the experiences of the Budapest Fellowship Program. So our guest today is Bence Széchenyi. Bence, thank you for being here with me today.
It's great to be here.
And of course, your name is something that instinctively gives out something interesting for Hungarian ears.
For the Hungarians listening, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And naturally, you have progressively exposed yourself to the legacy your name carries. But what are pieces of the name Széchenyi that you learned here in your BFP stay? Or what did you know about this name back in New York?
So, growing up, I had the pleasure of visiting Hungary from time to time. And so I saw the Széchenyi name on streets and statues and bathhouses. I had the 5,000 forint bill with Széchenyi on it. I had that hanging in my room when I was a kid. And it was sort of like this source of inspiration for me. But being here and through the Budapest Fellowship Program, especially, some of the events we've done, I've learned about the active role that Széchenyi still has as a figure, because from a distance, you think like a historical figure, someone that's important for the national history and things like that. But with movies like Híd Ember, for example, or many of the works of literature, I've had people I've met who have busts of him in his office. I've seen what a continual source of inspiration he is for some people in the country, which makes perfect sense to me as someone who studied Széchenyi and his life. Like, he was a strong critic of Hungary in many ways, but only out of a place of love and out of wanting to improve, the country that he's from and that he cares about. And I think that's an important position to take, like not being blindly, fervent about where you come from, but looking at it objectively and saying, how can I make this place that I care about better for everyone? And that's the position I think he struck. And I think he's a good role model. So I'm happy to see in many ways that he's relevant in people's lives in the same way that he is mine.
I mean, one thing that truly excites me about your situation is that you have been socialized in the US, but you still have this strong Hungarian identity.
Correct.
And you've been to Hungary before, but the experience I would be interested in learning about from you is, of course, you've been here in Hungary with some of your international friends or maybe Hungarian friends. What are the lenses through which you view Hungary? And what are the lenses you think your friends view Hungary? What interesting situations or tidbits?
Yeah, it's funny. I have a level of familiarity. Like I always say that, I'm about as Hungarian as you can get without the accent and the upbringing. Like the culture of my family was very strongly Hungarian, all my grandparents. So, I grew up with many of the similar cultural traditions, just in an American context. So, I have a level of familiarity with Hungarian way of life and certainly with the country as I've traveled around a fair bit. So, it's interesting being here with other American scholars because we'll walk down the street in a town we're visiting and they'll say, wow, look at that building. But to me, I'm thinking, okay, well, that's probably, a Habsburg building, and I can read the history a little bit in the towns because I have an awareness of the different influencing forces on the country over the years, and just I'd say a theoretical level of familiarity, which when I travel in Hungary becomes real knowledge as I am confronted with life on the ground and the things that are truly here. So I'm taking this cultural and sort of intellectual background formulated through my Hungarian family and cultural exposure, and then making that real knowledge by being here and coming face to face with the reality.
Just from this discussion, I can truly see the journalist speaking from you or by you. You really have this observant attitude.
Certainly. And Hungary is such an interesting place, especially if you're just looking at it at the physical makeup of towns, because I've developed the ability to see which buildings come from which era. And in that way, you can read the history of a town just by walking through it. Like you can see the heavy socialism influence, or if it's still relatively untouched from the Habsburg days, or if the medieval roots are still there. You can really see how the town was developed and at what time. So you can tell the history of how the town came to be and what eras were most influential on it. And it's a cool thing about Hungary.
And I mean, ever since the BFP program started, you have already been to several countries in Europe, but now sticking to Hungary at this point, what are elements within Hungary that are exciting for you from a journalistic perspective? What is one thing that would you like to report or just remember, write about?
I have kind of an abstract answer to this, but, being Hungarian and being in Hungary, I have a very, strong care for the people in this place, because in many ways I see myself in it, or more importantly, I represent Hungary as well through my name and stuff like that. So I've seen people here on the ground who maybe don't spend as much time in the international spotlight as some other people, and I've just gained an appreciation for these stories of people who are sort of outside of the international spotlight, right? Like every individual in this world has crazy stories that they can tell, but we hear some more than others. And I think that being here in Hungary and speaking to such a wide variety of people, as well as my experiences in other Eastern and Central European countries, I've come across many people with fascinating stories to tell who I had never heard about, despite the fact that my family's Hungarian, despite the fact that I came here a lot. There's still a tremendous amount of people in this country and in the surrounding area who I had never learned about their struggles and the lessons their history has to teach. So I've, going forward, I'll always remember that lesson of, look for stories in places where people don't, because there are just as good stories there outside of the spotlight.
Of course, now I try to look at you as an inspiring journalist in this regard, because that's what you are doing currently. Ever since you've set foot in Hungary in the framework of the BFP program, how do you think you improved in your writing skills or journalistic skills? What is something tangible that you managed to gain out of the program already?
I think my largest strides have been in the reporting side of the process. Last year, I was in Hungary on Fulbright, and I was doing a lot of writing, but it was mostly essays about history or personally driven narratives. This was really my first year and first experience being on the street, interviewing people, walking into a place and trying to figure out, hey, what's the story here? And so I've made great strides in my confidence of approaching people on the street and building a network, for example. Through the program, I've come into contact with experts in fields, brilliant professors and thinkers whom I have built relationships with, spoken to in service of articles, or reached out to put me in contact with other people that I could interview in the various places I've reported from. So I've learned how to build out a network of sources, a network of experts with whom I can consult as I report and try to tell the full story of my articles, which is tremendously valuable, because being able to write is one thing that's useful if you want to be a writer and write novels, but to report, you need to have a real world skill set, the ability to find sources, to build trust with people so they want to tell you their stories, to leave no stone unturned on your quest to figure out the truth. If you can allow me some hyperbolic speech.
I'm more than open for these. I must ask this question. I haven't had this question from the other fellows, but which Hungarian city do you like most outside Budapest? As a countryside boy, it is something that is close to my heart, and I just really want to get this out.
Well, I was born in Budapest, so you're right to say besides Budapest. Yeah. But I would say Pécs. I had been to Pécs before, but I have this memory from when I was a kid sitting up by that church that used to be a mosque, looking down through Széchenyi tér, but that's not why I like it, but it is called Széchenyi tér. And just that slope and the way the sun sets behind it, I think are fantastic. Plus it has, good nightlife, great university. It's a cool place. I'm actually going to a lecture there next week, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, I love the city as well.
Yeah, it's great.
It's amazing. One thing that is also very interesting for me is, of course, you live here among Hungarians, but you have that unique American perspective. What do you think that we Hungarians could incorporate from the American mentality, be it professional or personal?
It's an interesting question. I think that, I can't generalize to say, most Hungarians, but something I've incorporated with encountered with some of my friends here is, I've met very, very many talented and smart people who, because they come from sort of this, Eastern Central Europe, they're often outside of the international spotlight, are hesitant to apply to large international things. And, I have people that say to me like, oh, I'd love to move to New York and attend university there. And I say, well, apply. And for many Hungarians, that's like, well, no, I couldn't do that. And overcoming that sort of little brother mentality or, underdog mentality in a sense, and just believing, to quote Széchenyi István, like dare to be great. I might be misquoting him, but don't be caught up in an underdog mindset and believe that you're capable of great success on an international scale, because I've met some really talented people here, and I see a big international impact being possible, and I hope some of them are able to see that for themselves as well.
No, those are great. Those are good and great pieces of advice. I think, well, as a concluding question, I would like to ask how you plan to capitalize on and improve from your BFP experience. Do you know already how you want to move forward? And if so, how did the BFP program help you?
Yeah, I've got a good plan going for next year that the BFP made possible. So while I was here, I was doing independent reporting, as you know, for my platform, the 10 Toes Telegram, and using the work I had done for this platform and all the articles I wrote, I used that as my work samples to apply to Columbia Journalism School, which I've since been admitted to. So
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you actually knew that, but starting in August, I'll be getting my master's in journalism at Columbia University in New York. So after this, I won't be aspiring in my journalism career, but I'll be really doing it. That was only made possible through the time I was afforded here, the way I was introduced to the region, and so many ideas for the things I want to write about came up through the things I was exposed to on this fellowship and through being in this region. So, this next step and this big next step in my career is directly the result of the things I was able to do while I was here on this fellowship. So I'm very excited for the future.
No, that would be a great closing sentence. But if this manages to get to the cut, I must ask this question.
Sure.
As a New Yorker, what is your favorite snack in New York, and what is your favorite fast food or snack here in Budapest? Do you think we can compare?
Great question. I think that what I think is better here is the kebabs. For example, whenever I'm out in Budapest, I can always count on that good 3 a.m. kebab to tide me over. Whereas in New York, we're working with more deli sandwiches and stuff like that. So that's a big distinction. Both good, but both different.
Both good, both different. I think
that's the story of New York and Budapest in a nutshell.
No, that's really great. Bence, thank you very much for this discussion.
Bence, thank you very much for this discussion.
Thank you for listening to this MCC podcast episode. For further media content, please look up our English website at mcc.hu/en or look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you want to read more by our professors, external contributors, and students, check out our knowledge base at corvinus.hu/en.